In today's video, I am going to show you how to adjust and set correctly your clicker on your Olympic-style recurve bow. For those of you that are new here, my name is Kaminski. I'm a two-time Olympic silver medalist in the sport of archery. I'm working to make this channel a great resource to all types of archery. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscription button and the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video is uploaded. I'd appreciate it. So while I'm getting my stuff put on here to shoot my bow, what I'm going to be doing in this video is showing you how to set your clicker in the correct position so that way your draw length is set in the ideal position. There are a few things that you must take into consideration and some things that are important to consider. I'm going to give you a lot of tips and tricks that I've learned on how to set your clicker properly, both individually on your own, as well as a few different ideas on how you can help your friend, or your friend can help you set your clicker correctly, because sometimes we're just not quite sure if our draw length is set right. So the clicker, as we know what the clicker is, the clicker basically is a draw length checker. It's this thing right here on this Olympic style recurve, and you essentially draw the bow back and the clicker drops and it clicks, and that's when it tells you to shoot. That makes sure that your draw length is set at the exact same distance every single time, because with an Olympic style recurve like this here, our draw length is not set at a very specific set distance. There is no wall to pull against like a compound. So you have to make sure that you're at the same draw length every single time in order to have the same power put into this very lightweight arrow that is going to be traveling long distances, up to 90 meters or 100 yards at some tournaments. And a tiny little bit of weight change will affect the impact point vertically massively. So that's why we use a clicker. It's essentially to make sure that we're putting the same draw weight and the draw length into our system time after time. A few things to take into consideration when setting your clicker is the actual draw length. Like, what do you feel while at full draw? How much of your capacity to be at a given draw length are you? So like, for example, when my clicker clicks, I would say that I am roughly at 90%, 95%, probably 95% my maximum potential draw length that I can comfortably get. So what does that mean? And what do I mean by a percentage? So if I was at 100% of my draw length at full draw, that would mean I would have no more room to expand, no more room to grow, no more room to pull back any further. Essentially what would happen is, if this was my spine, my scapula would be coming around, and my scapula would basically just be stuck. I wouldn't be able to move, whether that be from range of motion and hitting my spine, range of motion from flexibility of muscles letting it come around, or things like that. So you really must take into consideration where you have your maximum draw length set with that clicker. So you really should take into consideration the percentage of what you possibly can pull back when setting your clicker. The reason I have it set at 95% and I wouldn't ever go above 98% is because you need to have that ability to keep moving. So meaning, when you are coming through the clicker, when you are trying to set it off in a high stress, high pressure situation, the wind is blowing and you really need to get the shot off quick, you really need to have that ability to move and get through the clicker when you need to, in case there is some sort of need for that. You shouldn't be at 99% plus, because it's already very difficult to get into that position. And so then trying to set the clicker off to maintain your timing is going to be really, really impossible, or very, very difficult at the least. So what I'm going to do in this video, again, I'm going to show you how to set it properly, a couple different tips and tricks. I've got another camera set here so it'll zoom in close on my clicker position. So when I'm doing a few key things, you'll be able to notice or be able to tell when I am doing those things. So hopefully I have the camera set up correctly, so that way we'll be able to see it. And then that way it'll make a whole lot more sense by the end of this video. So I've already talked about the percentage that you should feel while you're at full draw. But another thing to take into consideration outside of that is your timing. So when you are shooting archery and you have come to full draw, you've already started aiming and you're working on executing the shot and setting the clicker off, that should really take 2 to 3 seconds maximum. Absolutely 3 seconds maximum. 2 seconds would be better. Shorter is a good idea, especially if you're in an environment like the UK where it's constantly windy, and it's often better under pressure to get shots off quicker, because you have a lot less time to think, a lot less time for distracting thoughts to come into your head. So on top of the percentage of draw length, you need to make sure you're maintaining proper timing with control. Now the whole idea of this, and the whole idea of how to have your clicker set perfect for you, is to have a very, very tiny amount to move before the clicker goes off. After you have come to full draw and while you are starting to execute, you should have at the absolute maximum about 2 millimeters to expand through the clicker. 2 millimeters is pretty much a 1/16 of an inch, give or take. It's pretty close to that, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But you should have definitely no more than 1/8 of an inch to expand to set that clicker off. Now the reason that that's important is that if you have that small of an amount to expand to get through the clicker, and it should take you about 2 seconds to set that clicker off, moving slowly during that time frame of setting that clicker off with that much distance is going to give you way more control. Excuse the bugs, we're in Florida, they're just going to be flying around. Now what's important is, again, 2 millimeter maximum, maybe 1 millimeter if you can get away with it, if you have a lot of control, so that way you can expand even slower and even more controlled, and that way you'll be a better, tighter grouping archer and you'll shoot higher scores because of that. So what I would suggest is, as you are shooting, especially shooting in front of a target, because it's definitely different than shooting here at blank bale like I am. It's just a whole lot easier for me and a whole lot easier with this camera setup to do it here at blank bale. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to shoot a shot or two so you can see where my draw length is, and I'll have them overlaid picture in picture so that way you can see what I am doing and when I am at full draw to when the clicker clicks and I shoot and follow through. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'll do a couple of test shots here anyway to make sure that the camera is going to be focused here on the clicker. Hopefully I can do this without hitting the tripod too bad. There we go. This is going to be a challenge. All right, so I'm going to shoot a couple shots so that way you'll be able to see what's going on and I can get warmed up to be a bit more accurate with this. Oh, haven't shot yet, so gotta get warmed up. I did hit the tripod, so that'll be interesting to have to try to edit out. All right, so now what I'm going to do, and the first trick and the absolute best trick that I can possibly show you, and so that way you can visually tell and audibly have a reference point for when I am done transferring. A really quick recap on what transfer is. Transfer is both a physical and a mental step within Coach Lee's shot cycle, the NTS system, or the KSL shot cycle. And what happens during transfer is I basically am eliminating the thinking and the thought process from getting from the loading phase, the pulling the bow back, from the execution phase. And so what the execution phase is was when I am expanding to try to set the clicker off and to finish the shot. So transfer is the separation between the two. Transfer is also the relaxation of the hand muscles, the bicep muscles, and the transfer of the weight into my back. So that's a physical part of it. The mental part is separating the two phases. If you want some more information on what that means and how that goes, I will put links in the description below, plus a card at the top here to my form series that I did where I take you through the entirety of the KSL shot cycle and what it means to me and how you can implement it as an archer or a coach if you're watching as a coach. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hum at full draw so you can see when I have finished transferred before I am expanding. So that way you can visually see where the clicker is set during that time phase, because that's when it is important to have your clicker set correctly. So while I'm at full draw, I will transfer and I won't quite expand yet, and I will go, So you'll be able to hear when I have finished transferring. This is an extremely important tip that Coach Lee used all the time at the training center, especially in the early days of, okay, let's set your clicker correctly. Hum for me when you have finished transferred, so that way I can visually, meaning Coach Lee, could visually see where our draw length and where our clicker was set, so that way he could adjust it to be in the ideal position. So again, I'm going to hum for you after transfer here. Now I held it for a little bit and then started expanding again, and that slows down the entirety of the shot, and that is why my timing took a little bit too long that one. But I'll do it again for you so you can see it here again. And so you can see that right when I am finished transferring, I have very little to set the clicker off. So you can easily tell when I am humming after I have achieved transfer that I have a very little bit to expand to set the clicker off, and then how I'm expanding is very, very slow, very, very controlled, and it takes, about that 2 to 3 second time window as I've referenced already, and I can have the maximum amount of control, and my draw length is set correctly, and I am no more than 95 to 98% of my maximum draw length as well. So now that is how I would do it for the KSL shot cycle when there is a transfer involved within the shot cycle. Now, how would I implement this with a push-pull type method, a linear shot cycle where there is no definitive separation between the drawing and the execution phase? There may be in some styles, but the ones that I've been explained to about how it works, it's not an entirely differentiation between the two. What would be important is right after the archer comes to full draw and decides, okay, now I am ready to execute, I'm ready to set that clicker off, right then is when I would set that clicker length to be within 1 to 2 millimeters at the very, very most. And that way, again, like I said, the timing is good and the maximum draw length potential is there too. So now some things you can think about as well is, what does it feel like while you are executing? What does it feel like while you are transferring and while you are setting the clicker off? What does it feel like when you are trying to actually execute and set the clicker off? If you don't have a buddy that can check the clicker draw length for you like I did right here where I did the humming at full draw, you could either use a camera, and that would definitely help a lot because audibly I can hear it. But another way to do it while you are on your own is it really hard to set that clicker off? Does it take a lot of energy? Is it harder to set the clicker off than it was to really achieve full draw? And if it is, and if it's a struggle, and if you're shaking and really just can't get through the clicker, chances are you have the clicker set in too far, or it's a combination of two things. The clicker is set in too far, but then you're also expanding really, really fast and really, really hard and aggressively to try to get that timing to be within 2 to 3 seconds. And that's never ideal. You want to be able to do it extremely slow. The best way that I can describe it, like I have during my form series, was talking about how fast does everything happen. Transfer and expansion happen very, very slow in minuscule percentage points of how fast it is in comparison to how fast you draw the bow back, how fast you lift the bow with. Expansion should happen so very slow. The best analogy that I have is driving a manual vehicle. You're doing 30 miles an hour, 30K an hour, whatever you want to imagine. You're in first gear and the thing is just redlined at the RPM and it's happening really, really fast. That's how fast you lift the bow with. You drop it into second gear. That's you starting to load the bow and get into position. You drop it into third gear. As the RPMs start dropping more and more and more, that's what you anchor with, the speed and aggressiveness you anchor with. As you transfer, you're in fourth gear and it's now starting to slow down and you're starting to approach, 1500 RPM, 1800 RPM by that time. And then when you finally hit overdrive, you hit fifth gear, that's when you are now expanding. After you're transferring, you are expanding to set that clicker off, and it's happening just above idle. Just above me standing here and doing nothing is how fast I'm expanding with. It should be absolutely invisible to the public. The camera, anyone else, my coach, nobody should be able to see me expanding. If you take that 2 millimeters and you expand during that 2 millimeters for 2 to 3 seconds, no one will be able to see you moving through the clicker, and nobody will be able to see you moving trying to set that clicker off. That should be the entirety of your goal, is to move a minuscule amount so slow, so controlled, that it is absolutely invisible to anyone else out there. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider hitting the subscription button and the notification bell, as well as the like button. I would appreciate it. Also, please consider supporting my channel. If you head to my website, jakekaminski.com, there'll be info and links on Patreon, apparel, books, and equipment sales, PayPal donate button, a P.O. box to send things to, and above all else, please share this video because there's no better advertising than word of mouth.